And this is update for March 10th, 2024, then day 746 of the war and of the date update. Also catch up for March 9 and March 8. I'm going to start with general news, and then I'm going to switch to the situation on the battlefield in Ukraine. So first news out of Ukraine, which is pretty bad news for Ukraine. At the same time, probably bad in the short term. In the long run, actually, it's a very positive development for Ukraine. So Ukraine was the credit rating of Ukraine was reduced to double C. By S&P. There are three major credit agencies: Moody's, S&P, and Fitch. I would say probably S&P is the most leading one, and it reduced Ukrainian credit rating to double C, which is description of this. You can see here: default is imminent with little prospect for recovery. So this really means that Ukraine's government is probably going to stop making payments on its foreign debts, which it has more than 100 billion. I think it's probably between 130 150 billion US dollars at the minimum. Ukrainian GDP is way lower than that, so the situation is obviously dire. Ukrainian government needs to preserve cash to continue defending the country. Prospects of getting financial aid from the US, I would say, closer to zero than not. And you probably heard in the news that Hungarian President Viktor Orban met with US presidential candidate Donald Trump, and the outcome of that meeting is that when Donald Trump is going to be elected, there won't be any financial aid for Ukraine from the US, in the hope that that will trigger same reaction from Europe, and essentially it will defund Ukraine and make it fold. And essentially, the only sort of the problem in this thinking that there is no realization that then Ukraine become parts of Russia, and the West will be facing much more stronger country, or whatever you call that, another Soviet Union, or in this case it's going to be closer to Russian Empire, because Russian president has very clear vision of Russian Empire, and he does not accept Soviet Union vision of the development future for these territories. As I mentioned before, there is permanent fight between the two sides within Russia, between the Soviet and sort of more communism, and then Russian Empire, which is, I would describe it more closer to fascism. So none of those options are great. They basically two sides of the same coin, essentially. But going back to Ukraine, so the Ukraine has a lot of bonds issued to private investors, so probably those bonds are not going to get paid. And the recovery, what this really means, how much you're going to get. So for every dollar you invested, you're probably going to get 10 or 20 cents dollars in return. So basically you're going to lose 80%, close to. I'm not saying it's exactly, but somewhere in that ballpark will be lost by most of the investors. For Ukraine, it's obviously in the long run, it gives it opportunity to continue defending itself, to continue fighting. So from Ukraine essentially has nothing to lose, and I would say this would be right move, and it should have been done on the first day of the war, because all of this time Ukrainian government was paying on its foreign debts, which obviously doesn't make sense. Part of the reason there are a lot of speculation in Ukraine that this is related to the fact that a lot of Ukrainian debt is actually owned by former Ukrainian government officials and current Ukrainian government officials. So basically they're paying to themselves. This is obviously speculation. I cannot confirm that, but this would definitely explain stubborn desire to pay, despite the clear situation that Ukraine is just not getting, does not have money to do so, and it need to preserve cash that it has. This is one news out of Ukraine. Then there's another news, which again, another sign of desperation. So, Ukrainian Minister of Justice brought new draft of the law to Ukrainian Parliament, which allows drafting people from prisons into Ukrainian military, and also people who served in prison but already sort of served their term, done with the prison, and sort of released. This obviously, definitely, that situation is extremely logical, because if people, they serve the term, they done, they should be, they should be called into the army. For whatever reason, they were precluded from being called into the army by the existing Ukrainian law, which is, I think, you see how backwards it is. But the more important part is definitely recruiting soldiers among current prisoners, which is obviously what Russia has been doing in 2023, and I would say second half of 2022. Again, those were sort of relatively desperate measures by the Russian side, and also calculated measures, because from a Russian government perspective, they were getting rid of unproductive members of society, and they were sort of utilizing to the good use. And I'm saying this, I'm not saying that I share this view, this is absolutely cynical view, but that's how Russian government is seeing the situation. And it looks like Ukrainian government is going in the footsteps of that, except now it's a desperation time for Ukrainian government. I said it many times before. The reality of it is that there is enough people in Ukraine to continue defending Ukraine, to continue fighting. There's just no incentive. The people don't see what they need to die for, and not to mention that they see completely incompetent leadership, and that really makes them vote with their feet outside of the country. So it's not the people who are to be blamed for all of this. It's actually incompetent government that drives people away from the country. That's a root cause of this problem. Now let's switch to the situation on the battlefield. And the first, just general observation: Russian activity went down significantly. Unclear what's the reason, what's the end goal, but it went down significantly overall on all sections of the front line. Now I'm gonna do a quick walkthrough in a clockwise fashion, the way I always do, starting from very north. So the situation along the state border remains more or less the same. No imminent threat of Russian invasion from there. Now let's jump to the situation along on the North Lugansk front line. Things here fairly quiet. So, for example, there's not even any attacks towards Kupiansk. There are some very relatively weak attacks towards Terny, which has become sort of feature of the section of the front line. But again, they are down in their intensity significantly. Now let's jump to the North Donbass front line. The northern sector back to its sort of quiet situation, as it's always been. The southern part of it is there is activity west of Bakhmut and southwest, as you can see. But again, the activity, the intensity, the strengths, the numbers, it's all went down significantly. And so just there are no advances by Russian troops here. Now let's move to central Donbass front line. Again, attacks are again in all the same areas west of Avdiivka. then obviously the Smaryanka salient, Novomikhailivka, but the same situation, intensity, quantity, sort of content of the troops all went down significantly. Again, unclear what's going on behind it. Either Russian side used up all of their resources in prior attacks and they just simply exhausted, or they regrouping, replanning. We'll find out in a sort of short order. But for now, things are definitely much more manageable for Ukrainian side. Now let's look at Zaporizhya front lines. Things here are generally pretty much quiet. So it's back to the sort of quiet situation it has seen, let's say, prior to Ukrainian so-called offensive, because as I stated before many times, it wasn't really even offensive in the true meaning of the word. Now let's move and check the last section of the front line situation along the Dnipro River. Things here also on the quiet side. No major Russian attacks or attempts to destroy Ukrainian bridgeheads. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Until next time, bye bye.